Not everyone who is wealthy, famous, and widely known is a person of great merit, and not everyone who lives quietly, simply, and speaks little is ordinary. There are people who seem unremarkable, yet wherever they go there is less gossip and contention. Wherever they sit, that place naturally grows calm. Anyone near them feels their heart soften. Such people carry quiet merit. They do not show off or put on a display. Their merit does not lie in words, but in a very still field of energy. From their eyes, their gait, the way they nod, the way they refrain from arguing, everything carries the aftertaste of lives spent sowing goodness without seeking reward. People of quiet merit do not need to jostle for position, yet they are provided for. When others panic, they keep their composure. When danger arises, something seems to guard them in silence. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who lightens your heart at a glance, who needs no moral lecture, yet makes others want to live better. They may be people who have carried quiet merit across many lifetimes, and they often bear qualities that are very still and very deep, not the sort of things the eye easily catches. I will gently reveal the traits commonly seen in those who carry quiet merit from many lives. You may recognize them around you, or even within yourself, though you may never have looked closely. First, a humble bearing and eyes that put others at ease. Those with quiet merit from many lifetimes rarely present a flashy exterior. They do not need fine clothes, loud words, or self-assertion. Yet in a crowded room, they are the ones who make others grow silent. It is not because they are the most capable, but because there is something special in them: humility. They do not show off, do not compete to speak, do not seek the spotlight. Yet those beside them feel safe, light, and able to breathe. In them is a current of energy that needs no words, and people still sense a serenity and an unspoken refuge. Their eyes are not sharp or probing, not the kind that rob others of confidence. On the contrary, their gaze is quiet, deep, and very warm. When you are tangled inside, they do not tell you that you are wrong. They simply look in a way that helps you become still. When you are confused, they do not rush to advise. They listen gently and help you soothe yourself from within. Such a person does not need to reason about doctrine or preach about cause and effect. Their humility and their eyes are a living lesson. Behind that simple appearance are lifetimes of practice, patience, and letting go of the ego of living for others more than for oneself. Merit does not have to appear as wealth or status. There is a kind of merit that sinks into one's manner. It is the kind that lets you, even with little, inspire trust. You do not force anyone to follow, yet your words are heard. It is not because you have power, but because you have virtue. It is not because of high learning, but because of a past lived well. Humility is a precious energy, like a small stream running through a deep forest. No one advertises it, yet anyone who passes by in thirst feels its coolness. So if you meet someone whose gaze is very still, who sits lightly, speaks little, does not argue, does not show off, yet everyone finds approachable, that person is very likely carrying quiet merit from many lifetimes. Second, they do not break under hardship or scatter in calamity. Some people look ordinary, but when disaster strikes, they are steadier than all. They do not resent, do not complain, do not fall into confusion. They do not ask why they suffer or who is at fault. They simply keep a period of silence, then look for a way to move forward, because they know suffering exists and the work is to pass through it. They do not torment themselves over the past, nor fear the future. They live fully in the present. This calm is the sign of an inner strength that not everyone has. It does not come from degrees or money, but from lifetimes that have already been broken, have lost, have endured, and have stood up again. Those with quiet merit across many lives are often aided in strange ways when misfortune comes. Sometimes they are a hair's breadth from danger and still escape. When the road seems ended, a small turn unexpectedly opens. They do not speak much about luck, but others can see they seem protected. Not everyone believes this, but if you have met such a person, you will understand. There are layers of merit that are not visible to the eye. They lie deep in the good karma, cultivated quietly and without calculation. And just when you think there is no one that fortunate, the truth is that person has sown much goodness you have not seen. If you wonder how to recognize them further, look to the next sign. Third, they are not flashy or rich, yet they are never without enough. People with quiet merit from many lifetimes are not necessarily magnates, celebrities, or high-flying entrepreneurs. But you will notice something different in them. They are not lacking. They are not short of food, nor shelter, nor loving regard. What is needed appears, but not in excess for display, not in glitter to draw attention. Their life is like a well-fitting garment, neither too loose nor too tight. They know what is enough, and because they know what is enough, they do not feel poor. Money arrives in amounts that keep worry at bay. Work comes in measures that keep life from growing dull. People come in ways that keep loneliness away. Everything seems to have been arranged from somewhere. They do not seize and compete, yet what ought to come returns to them. This is how quiet blessings operate. They do not shout or rush, yet they are firm and sure like soil holding water. There is no need for a storm, but when the season comes, flowers still bloom. You will see that they do not fret about tomorrow, and they do not cling to what has passed. They live fully in each present moment, and that very fullness of presence gives rise to blessing. If you wonder whether someone who does not contend can still have enough to live, listen to another sign, and you will see the answer more clearly. Fourth, the closer you are to them, the more you want to become better. Some people never preach a single doctrine, yet being near them makes you want to live kindly. You may not know why, but when you sit beside them, your heart softens. Thoughts of anger and calculation seem to fold away on their own, as if something inside you were whispering that it is all right to be gentler. This is not an external force, but a benevolent field gathered from many lives of living well, living decently, and living without harming others. Wherever people of quiet merit go, tension tends to subside. They do not interfere in others' affairs, yet people naturally behave more gently when they are present. This is a special sign, for their field of goodness is not meant to persuade, but to transform. It is not to instruct, but to remind others of the goodness within themselves. If someone makes you want to live more beautifully, more peacefully, more deeply, they may not only be a good person, but someone carrying quiet merit. Fifth, they do not judge readily, yet they understand deeply. When you tell them your story, they do not interrupt, do not debate right and wrong. They simply listen and nod. Few words are needed, yet your heart feels lighter because you know they understand without elaborate explanation. People of quiet merit do not carry a judging mind toward others. They do not use a harsh gaze to search out faults. They have walked through enough pain to understand that everyone has reasons of their own, that everyone has been lost at times, and everyone deserves a chance to be forgiven. You will see they are not quick to recite someone's faults, not eager to declare who is right or wrong, yet they are the ones people seek out in suffering. They know how to guard their tongue, how to guard their mind, and how to keep their heart from being swayed by the world's disputes. That very silence is a form of blessing, keeping themselves from creating harm through speech and giving others a piece of ground on which to return. Sixth, they do not like to argue, yet their words always carry weight. People of quiet merit rarely debate, do not seek to win with words, do not need the last say, and do not have to prove themselves right. Strangely, others listen to them more than to anyone else. This is because what they say is not meant to persuade, to win, or to defeat, but to illuminate. They often speak little, but whenever they open their mouth, it is at the right time, in the right place, and in the right way, wounding no one yet awakening someone. Not loud yet enough to make a room fall silent and listen. Not lengthy yet enough to soften a quarrel at its peak. That is the power of speech nourished by humility and compassion. It is the voice of one who does not speak to stand out, but speaks to help others see. You will find them sitting quietly while others fight to be right. They do not interrupt or interfere, but when people stop from exhaustion, they are the one who says a single sentence that settles the whole room. This is not a technique, but the crystallization of many lifetimes lived with mindfulness, moral discipline, and quiet self-cultivation. Quiet merit is not noisy, but when it speaks, people naturally want to listen. And you will see that the more silent blessings a person carries, the less they need to say. Sometimes their mere presence is already a complete answer. Seventh, they meet the right person at the right time without asking for help. There are those who at their most desperate moment suddenly meet a helping hand. They do not need to ask. They do not need to beg. Aid arrives as lightly as a passing breeze, yet exactly on time, not by chance, but because quiet merit is at work. People with quiet merit from many lifetimes often meet benefactors at moments when it seems no one is left. It is not because they are lucky, but because in previous lives they themselves were benefactors to others, helping in silence without expecting return. When they fall into need, that merit comes back, never flashy but always sufficient. Some receive devoted care from a doctor after being turned away elsewhere. Some are hired just when they need it most. Some are given shelter by a stranger on the exact stormy night they have nowhere to go. These things seem small, yet they are the turning points of a life. People of quiet merit do not live by vague faith in a god of luck. They live kindly, peacefully, gently, and blessings arrive in very real, very earthly forms. A benefactor is not someone far away, only the person who does not turn their back at the moment you suffer. When you see someone who often meets good people and receives help at the right time, you can trust that person has sown much goodness without calculation. Blessings do not come by pleading. They come from steady, decent living that no one sees, yet never disappears. If you are someone who often helps others quietly without needing thanks, keep this faith. When you need it, the blessing will surely return. And if you are wondering how to know whether someone is truly kind, please move on to the next sign. 8th, they do not compete and do not need to win, yet their names are called at the end. Some do not enter life to applause, do not move fast, and do not rush to be first. Yet in the end, they are the ones who remain longest. They do not like arguments, do not bristle at being misunderstood, and do not need to prove that they are right. They quietly do their part well, then step back so others can shine. But life has eyes and blessings have memory. What is sown with a sincere heart is never lost. Those who carry quiet merit do not jostle. They do not speak harshly or step over others to advance. Yet they have a strength that makes others naturally give way. Not because they demand it, but because they deserve it. Not because they run fast, but because they walk rightly. They do not need to defeat anyone because what they seek is not victory but peace. This world may temporarily spotlight the skilled talker, but long-lasting trust goes to the one who lives gently, honestly, who keeps their word and guards their heart. People of quiet merit do not need to stand out in every meeting, yet at the most important moments, their names are mentioned as a place of reliance. So if you are living decently and have not been recognized, do not lose heart. Keep living cleanly, kindly, lightly. The door for those of quiet merit may not open first, but once it opens, no one can close it. You will realize that what is truly yours never needs to be seized. If you can still believe this, you will want to hear the next part to better understand the very path you are on. 9th, they may not be the ones who help the most, but they bring the most peace. Some people do not appear to give much. They are not at the top of charity lists, do not often appear at fundraising events, do not talk much about kindness, and do not need thanks. Yet if you sit near them for a while, you feel your heart soften. They do not need to give money or advice. Their presence alone brings relief. People of quiet merit from many lifetimes often carry a very unusual field. It is not an overpowering energy or a captivating force. It is a softening energy that settles things down, calming anger, easing sorrow, even quieting the negative thoughts that hover in another's mind. Some enter a room and sweep the atmosphere along with them. When someone of quiet merit enters, the air returns to where it should be, gentle and at ease. They have learned how to dwell peacefully within themselves. They are not shaken, do not react in haste, are not impulsive, and do not stand on guard. That dwelling in peace spreads to those who are anxious nearby. If you have ever met someone who makes you feel calm just by sitting next to them, no lofty talk, no confessions of hardship, only their presence, and you already feel healed, then know this: you have just encountered a person who carries quiet merit. If you have been blessed to be near such a person, you understand that blessing is not money falling from the sky. It is someone who at the exact moment you are lost appears as a still harbor where you can sit and rest. Let us go on to see that quiet merit can show itself even more deeply in the simplest lines of daily living. People of quiet merit do not shine with a blinding light. They do not dazzle at first sight, but the longer you are near them, the warmer your heart feels. Quiet merit is a blessing that lies deep beneath the surface. It does not boast and does not flaunt, but when needed, it upholds like a bedrock beneath the pilgrim's step. They do not preach doctrine, but they live with true integrity. They do not lecture on cause and effect, but each step is a testament. They do not judge, yet their presence makes others want to live more kindly. Then we realize that in a world noisy with rivalry, the presence of a gentle person who is quietly decent is enough to bless the very air around them. If you do not yet see these traits in yourself, do not be sad. Blessing can be sown, and quiet merit is nourished by living well, speaking gently, restraining harm, and helping others, without needing to be seen, and without making a stir. Live so that your heart is untroubled. There is no need to prove anything. Sit anywhere, and let that place grow cool. Do not hope for the world's gratitude. Simply bow down and care in silence. Blessings from many lifetimes are not written on the forehead. They live in your bearing, in your eyes, in how you treat a falling leaf, a soft word, a single act of forgiveness. If you are steady enough to live kindly, quiet enough, not to envy, gentle enough, not to harm, then quiet merit will come lightly, yet enough to keep you from breaking even when life tilts. We may not carry blessings from a past life, but we can begin in this life with one thing only: living truly well. Each person is born not only with their own dreams and ambitions, but also bearing an invisible portion of the ancestors. This inheritance is not in material assets. It hides in the karmic strands that bind what has passed to what will come. We may not remember past lives or know how our grandparents lived, but when something unusual repeats itself in a family line, when a certain suffering seems to pass from one generation to the next, that is the time to pause and listen more deeply. This teaching is not meant to frighten or torment, but to hand you a bright mirror. It lets us see that nothing arrives by accident. No suffering is without cause, and no karma is beyond transformation if a person sows enough light in their present life. Remember that every word we speak, every deed we do, every thought that arises is a seed. That seed does not disappear. It waits for conditions to bloom or bear fruit. If today we can live a little more slowly, hear the bell of wakefulness in our own hearts, release a little anger, add a little understanding and love, then in that very moment, we have begun to turn the current of karma. Do not wait until your children must carry pain to regret. Do not wait until your own life is trapped to beg for transformation. Light does not come from pleas. It comes from small, concrete actions in daily life. A sincere apology is light. A filial meal is light. A single stick of incense lit with a true heart, a sutra recited in the night, these are light. Descendants do not need a vast inheritance. They need a home rich in ethics. They need an example of decent living, of kindness, of a quiet upward direction. Only when we sow that into the present can the future sprout goodness. One who understands the way is not the one who speaks well or memorizes many scriptures, but the one who returns to themselves, owns their part, and vows not to let suffering repeat in their children's lives. That is how an ordinary person becomes a bearer of light for an entire family line. In the stillness of midnight, when the city is asleep, a man sits alone before the ancestral altar. The oil lamp flickers before an old photograph, yellowed by time. A light breeze seems to pass, the incense quivers, and in that hazy instant he hears a voice echoing in his mind. He does not know from where, nor whether it is dream or waking. My child, if you can read these lines, then perhaps I have found a way to send a message from the other shore. I am someone who once bore heavy karma, who lived a whole life with wrong choices. What I sowed, my children and grandchildren are harvesting. Yet precisely because of that, I have seen from the darkest place of the soul that light can still arise from one person who knows how to stop and live differently. Do not think of karma as a harsh fate that cannot be turned. Just as retribution can pass down through generations, so can blessings. That is the miracle. I cannot go back and live my life again, but you, yes. You can resow the seeds I once withered." The man fell still, not knowing when his tears had begun to fall. No one can prove that there are spirits, or that dreams carry messages, yet deep within he felt one thing clearly: something had awakened him. A call to wakefulness from the bloodline, from the ancestors, from the very heart that longed to make amends of those who went before. He stood up, lit another stick of incense, and joined his palms. For the first time in many years, he knelt before the ancestral altar, without praying for wealth, promotion, or things outside himself. He only whispered through sobs, "If there is anything I can do to resolve the faults of the ancestors and save this lineage, please let me begin today." From that moment, a journey began. Not a journey of 10,000 miles outward, but one that goes deep to the bottom of the spirit. Not to seek miracles, but to learn how to sow goodness again, in a life that had gone astray too many times. Who knows, one person in a family who returns to the wholesome path may already be enough to build a bridge for light to return. If we believe that retribution can be handed down, we should also believe that blessings can be as well. That story is not merely a legend, not an illusion, but a real path for anyone brave enough to begin again from the heart. There are things that seem invisible yet steer life like underground currents flowing through generations. A person may be born with a heavy temperament, fail again and again in business, suffer misfortune in love, be frail in health. Though they have done nothing obviously wrong, they still live in a long chain of unease. What is the reason? Is it fate, or is it karma? The invisible inheritance that truly exists, transmitted from one life to the next like a hidden bloodstream. The Buddha taught that everything that happens has a cause. Nothing is random, and nothing disappears. Every action, every word, every thought leaves a trace like characters engraved into the stream of time. And as water flows from the headwaters to the lowlands, karma flows from the ancestors down to the descendants, drop by drop, layer by layer, quietly soaking into the soil of each person's mind. Karma is not only what we create in our own lives, but also what we carry from forebears who once lived. Some inherit karma from grandparents and parents, inheriting fears, resentments, habits of anger, deceitful ways of living, or narrow-minded psychology. These things do not arise on their own. They are transmitted like a dark bloodstream, threading through every cell. Yet within that very current lies a marvel. If retribution can be handed down, blessings can spread as well. Blessing is like light, like a cool spring. If one person in a family is willing to rise to virtuous action to cultivate the mind, keep the precepts, and live decently, that person is like placing a great stone to dam the torrent of harmful karma, and thereby opening a new direction for generations to come. There was once a family that had suffered for 3 generations. Everyone in the house fell to grave illnesses and business failures. Among the grandchildren, one became addicted, another went to prison, and no one understood why. Until one day, the youngest daughter, after witnessing her father's painful death, vowed to adopt lifelong vegetarianism, to recite the Kshitigarbha Sutra each night, and to dedicate the merit to all the karmic creditors and adversaries of the family line. She did not pray for wealth or anything for herself. She prayed only for the ancestors' resentments to be resolved soon. 3 years later, she still lived as simply as at the beginning, but strangely, her siblings began to change for the better. The brother who had been addicted to drugs suddenly resolved to go to rehab. The sister who had suffered severe depression could now smile and had found a new faith. And in a dream, the father appeared to tell her that their family had turned onto a different road thanks to the small lamp his granddaughter had lit. That is not a fairy tale, but a testimony to a truth. Karma is not an eternal chain. It is a current that can be redirected if there is enough inner light. For this reason, sowing blessings today is not only for oneself. It is building a bridge from darkness to light for the whole bloodline to cross. It is laying a span between lives that have passed and lives yet to come. Blessing does not lie in anything strange. It lies in each act of turning back, each word that stops in time, each breath that remembers gratitude, and each day lived guarding the purity of one's heart. This is the deeper meaning of the 7 ways of sowing wholesome seeds that will be discussed in the chapters ahead, not as simple formulas, but as patches of rich soil with which to replant a garden long left fallow. Because of the currents of karma, there was a small riverside village where every household carefully worshipped the ancestors. Each evening when the temple bell rang, the elders would take their grandchildren to the temple gate to bow to the Buddha, then return home to light incense. The people there believed that to live a peaceful life, one must begin with respect for those who gave birth to us. But not every lineage enjoyed such peace. At the end of the village stood an old house where many sad events had occurred. For generations that family had lived in division. Fathers resented sons. Children and mothers would not even mention the grandparents. Each person lived for themselves, irritable and cold, and disasters came one after another. One fell gravely ill, another went bankrupt, and someone took their own life for reasons unknown. The house grew gloomy, as if shrouded by a black cloud, until one day a child from that house wandered into the temple, and an elderly monk gave him a piece of calligraphy, bearing the character for filial piety. The child innocently asked, "Does this character do anything? No one in my house shows any filial respect at all." The teacher only smiled and said, "Take it home and hang it before the family altar. Read it once each day and bow 3 times. Then simply watch as things begin to change." Strangely, from that day, the boy bowed 3 times before the calligraphy every day. No one told him he had to, but that simple ritual began a quiet wave in the house. The oldest grandmother, seeing her grandson bow, was moved to tears and began to tell old stories. The father, an alcoholic, one night saw his child bowing to the ancestors in silence and felt something strike his heart, and so one day he knelt down beside his child. That house began to change, not because someone preached doctrine or lectured about cause and effect, but simply because a child unconsciously bowed to the ancestors with a sincere heart. That bow was like a spring at the source, reopening a stream of blessings that had been buried. People often think filial piety is a matter of formality, buying offerings, holding large memorial rites, lighting enough incense. In truth, a filial heart is what opens the door to true blessings. A gentle word to one's parents, a small act like tucking a blanket over an elderly mother, pouring water for an ailing father, or simply refraining from arguing when they are wrong. All of these are light that fades the darkness of unfilial conduct once sown by someone in the lineage. Unfilial karma is among the heaviest. It dissolves the bloodline, leaves descendants without direction and parents without refuge. One unfilial person can drag a whole lineage to the cliff's edge. By contrast, one filial person can raise an entire family to its feet. Keeping a filial heart is not an act for the ancestors, but an act that saves oneself. When we live with gratitude and acknowledge the roots that gave us life, we are reviving the wellspring of virtue that has run dry. In the sutra on repaying the kindness of parents, the Buddha teaches, "A parent's grace is as high as the sky and as vast as the sea. A lifetime of prostrations would not suffice to repay it. Because that grace is so deep, the moment we learn to bow our head, we are also lifting ourselves out of base karma. Beginning with filial piety, everything can be reborn. Beginning with a single sincere prostration, an entire lineage can receive a wondrous light. Do not wait until your parents have passed to erect a grand statue or build an elaborate tomb. Keep filial piety through daily living, through care and attention, through a gentle gaze and considerate words. Wherever there is filial piety, there is blessing. Keep the precepts, live according to the true Dharma, and rebuild the hedge that protects the family's karmic field. People often build high walls to stop thieves and strong gates to protect wealth. Few remember that without moral discipline, even a grand mansion cannot keep invisible misfortune from drawing near step by step. Precepts are not chains but a fence of wakefulness. As a traveler in the night needs a lamp, one who lives amid many snares needs precepts to keep from stumbling into harmful karma. The precept of not stealing, because taking what is not yours plants the seed of poverty for a lifetime to come. When a household lives by deceit and fraud, do not be surprised if the descendants suffer constant loss, assets vanish, and the family quarrels because wealth cannot be kept. The precept of refraining from sexual misconduct, because when someone destroys another's family and lives licentiously, the roots of ethics are ruined. Children are born not knowing fidelity, not knowing the way of husband and wife, not knowing respect for body and soul. That is the beginning of a downfall that runs through generations. The precept of not lying, because false speech is like a sharp blade that severs trust between people. A father who always lies will raise children who trust no one, and that household will be full of suspicion with no soil for kinship to take root. The precept of not drinking to intoxication, because when the mind is clouded by drink, one easily loses boundaries and does wrong. Many acts of violence, accidents, and crimes begin with a cup of alcohol. The drinker not only destroys their own body, but also emits a negative energy that spreads through the family. The precept of not killing, because when blood is shed, even that of a small creature, the door to cruelty opens. A family accustomed to killing and to eating on the suffering of living beings will find it difficult to enjoy long peace. Children who grow up amidst the cries of animals will gradually grow numb, unable to feel compassion or the pain of others. The 5 basic precepts are like 5 pillars that keep the roof of karmic consequence from collapsing. One who keeps the precepts does not only keep them for themselves, they are rebuilding a hedge of light around the entire family. When one person in the household lives in accord with the Dharma and keeps a pure heart, that energy gradually permeates the living space. The air in the home softens. The hot-tempered begin to mellow. Those who often met misfortune suddenly find things flow more smoothly. This is not a miracle. It is the crystallization of wholesome energy, radiating from a person who keeps the precepts. Someone asks, "I keep the precepts, yet my family still suffers. Why is that?" Remember that deep karma is like an ancient well. You cannot empty it in a single day. If we do not begin to keep the precepts today, that well will only grow deeper. But if we patiently live rightly and kindly day by day, the clear water will slowly rise, and the light will gradually reach the bottom. Keeping the precepts is how we keep the family's roots from rotting. It is how we build an invisible yet solid wall that shields descendants from ripening misdeeds that hover overhead. It is how we take charge of destiny, not through begging, but through inner practice. One who keeps the precepts is like a person tending a tree. Today they mound the soil, tomorrow they water, the next day they pull the weeds. The sweet fruit may not appear at once, but one day the shade will cool an entire area and blossoms will open for flocks of birds to return. That blessing will not stop with one lifetime. Adopt vegetarian meals, recite the Buddha's name, chant sutras, and pave a path of lotus petals for your descendants. Someone once asked, "I am just an ordinary person, not a monastic, without the ability to do great deeds for the world. What can I do to transform my family's karma?" The answer is simple yet profound. Adopt vegetarian meals, recite the Buddha's name, chant sutras. These 3 seemingly simple practices are 3 of the brightest lamps to light the way for an entire lineage. Vegetarian eating is not only abstaining from meat and fish, it is stopping the harm done to living beings and choosing each day to live with compassion and reverence for life. A meal without blood and tears is a meal with blessing. A person who turns to vegetarian eating may be cutting off a heavy branch of killing karma that has clung to the family for generations. Some hereditary illnesses and nameless restless currents of karma sometimes have their source in meals filled with blood and heat and karmic force. Reciting the Buddha's name is not to get the Buddha to give us anything. It is to bring the mind back to mindfulness. A single Namo Amitabha Buddha is not only a sound, it is a pure current of energy pouring into consciousness. When someone in the family often recites the Buddha's name, the home seems to gain a wholesome life force that spreads outward. The descendants gradually grow less agitated. The living space becomes more serene, and the one who recites is like a lightning rod that quietly transforms negative energy into peace. Chanting sutras is not to read for the Buddha to hear, but to sow the Buddha's words into our own mind. Each verse is a stream that waters the field of the heart, clears the weeds, and washes away delusion, doubt, and anger. The Chittagarbha Sutra is especially regarded as a powerful Dharma treasure that helps resolve ancestral karma and open blessings for both the departed and the living. Whoever chants this scripture with a sincere mind and dedicates the merit to the ancestors is like sending light down into the dark depths where the souls of loved ones may still be wandering. There was a poor elderly woman who lived in a small house and ate boiled vegetables with salt every day, yet she never missed a single session of chanting. She recited the Buddha's name in silence, known to no one and praised by no one. Yet her grandchildren, one after another, began to change. One left a criminal path and returned to honest work. One escaped a severe illness. One excelled at school. People said she was blessed, but she only smiled and said, "It is not because of me. It is thanks to the Buddha, thanks to the sutras, thanks to those sincere recitations each night. Perhaps no one can see that light, but I believe my ancestors can." One who recites the Buddha's name, adopts vegetarian meals and chants sutras is quietly paving a road of lotus flowers for their descendants. It is not a path for display. It is a path that leads the family's spirit out of the mire of karmic obstruction. Each verse is a brick. Each grain of vegetarian rice is a drop of ambrosia. Each invocation of the Buddha is a lotus petal opening under one's feet. People often say that practice is the work of monastics, yet in truth, practice belongs to anyone who knows how to love and to care for their dear ones. Not everyone can save a nation, but anyone can save a family by beginning with themselves. Eat a meal without harm. Chant a session without hurry. Recite a single Buddha name in wakefulness. Do not wait for calamity to beg for help. Practice while everything is still peaceful, for that is how we build blessings at the root for ourselves, for our parents, for our children and grandchildren, and for the nameless spirits who once shared our family's blood. Do good unconditionally and plant seeds of virtue in the field of the heart for the generations to come. There is a wonder in the law of cause and effect. A small seed sown in a pure field can grow into a forest of blessings for the future. This happens only when we sow with our whole heart, without calculation, without self-interest, without waiting for a return. Only then can the seed truly take deep root in the soil of merit. Doing good is not for praise, and not for tallying points to exchange for luck. Do good because you cannot do otherwise, because loving kindness has grown in you the way water naturally flows to low ground, and a flower naturally turns toward the sun. There was a wealthy man who was not happy. He gave much to charity, built temples and bridges, distributed rice to the poor, yet he still felt empty. His home was not peaceful, and his children strayed. He went to a Zen master and asked, "Why have I done so many good deeds and still found no peace?" The master looked at him for a long time and replied, "When you give, do you truly let go, or are you waiting for applause?" The question awakened him. He realized that for a long time his good deeds had been a tacit trade with heaven and earth. He thought that if he did enough and helped enough people, the heavens would repay him with peace. Blessing does not come from calculation. It comes from where no one sees, from the moment we do something kind that no one knows about, no one records, and no one remembers. Doing good unconditionally is when we help someone without asking their name and without caring whether they will be grateful. It is when we quietly pay for the medicine of a stranger who is ill. It is when we mend a torn coat and send it to a homeless person as a gift from the realm of the unseen. It is when we lift a worm from the hot asphalt, though no one notices. These tiny seeds have power beyond time. They slip into the very cells of the family's blessings. Later, someone may ask, "What do you gain by helping a stranger? What use is it?" Cause and effect does not run like an account book. It moves like light and breath. What we sow today may bloom in another life, in another person, in another dimension we will never see. One thing is certain: that wholesome energy does not disappear. It is stored in the karmic field of the family like embers that glow quietly until one day they flame into a torch to light the way. A lineage with someone who habitually does quiet good will have descendants who more easily succeed, who more easily meet benefactors, and who seldom encounter great disasters. It is not because their forebears begged the gods. It is because they sowed wholesome seeds so long and so deeply that even heaven and earth cannot ignore them. When we plant seeds in the soil, we do not sow today and harvest tomorrow. Some seeds need rain, some need sun, some need a long winter of sleep before they push up. Once they sprout, the flowers will bloom for the whole forest, and the fruit will ripen for the generations to come. Doing good unconditionally is like depositing blessings in the invisible bank of the universe. Do not take interest early, and do not ask for receipts. Know only that blessings will arrive when the mind is pure enough and the seed meets the right springtime. Avoid harmful speech and purify the current of words that runs through the family. People say that words cost nothing, yet those same words can be the sharpest blade cutting deepest into a human heart. A vicious sentence can break a family. A slanderous rumor can create karma that lasts for generations. Verbal karma is among the most dangerous because it is created daily and hourly, while the one who creates it rarely notices. A person may refrain from stealing, killing, and sexual misconduct, yet still plant heavy karma through speech alone. Why is that? Because words enter the ear but sink into the heart, and the heart is fragile. A careless phrase can leave a wound that never heals. There are family lines in which every generation includes someone who curses, speaks harshly, and sows discord. Strangely, the children of that house grow up only to scatter. Spouses quarrel. Siblings resent each other. Outsiders think it is due to circumstance, but deep down, it is the stream of verbal karma being handed down like an invisible cord binding the whole family. There are also homes where a person steps inside and feels lighter at once. No one raises their voice. No one argues. People speak gently and courteously. Children are taught from a young age to use kind words, words of gratitude, words of encouragement. The children of that house grow up gentle and are welcomed wherever they go. It is not due to luck. It is because the energy of speech in that home has been purified through the generations. Avoiding verbal karma means practicing right at the gate of the mouth. Do not lie, do not sow division, do not speak with cruelty, do not speak meaninglessly. Each time you feel like saying something harsh, pause and ask yourself, is this necessary? Will it hurt anyone? Does it nurture compassion? One who guards against verbal karma is protecting the family's harmony. A mother can teach her children the best lessons simply by speaking gently each day. A husband can make his wife happy, not with wealth, but with kind and considerate words. And a child raised in an atmosphere of kind speech will naturally learn to love and to empathize. There was a young woman who had been scolded and cursed by her mother since childhood. As she grew up, she became depressed, withdrawn, and distrustful of herself. One day, she decided to change. She learned to speak softly to her mother, even when her mother was bitter. She learned not to retort, not to justify, but to remain quiet and gentle. Gradually, the atmosphere at home shifted. Her mother, once so difficult, learned to keep silent. Then one day she said, "I don't know why, but I feel my heart soften when you no longer argue with me." That sentence was like a miracle. Decades of verbal karma began to be resolved by one person who knew how to stop her words. Words are like arrows. Once shot, they cannot be taken back. Yet words are also like a stream. If you choose them well, it is like pouring nectar that cools another's heart. One who speaks wholesome words creates a field of peace, not only for themselves, but for those around them. Avoiding verbal karma is one of the strongest ways to transform the karma of a lineage, because words carry energy, and once that energy is released, it affects the entire living space and the minds of the descendants. A family with someone who knows how to hold their tongue is a family laying roots and building lasting blessings. Speak less but with more depth. Speak more slowly, but with more compassion. Speak to heal, not to harm. Verbal karma is not only about words, it is about the direction of the mind. Keep a heart of gratitude, the fertile soil that nourishes the sprouting of every blessing. There is a kind of heart from which all good things can grow as trees from the earth and flowers from the sun. It is a grateful heart. One who is grateful does not need much to feel complete. One who is ungrateful may possess a treasure hoard and still complain of having nothing. Gratitude is not something lofty. It is a way of living a light breath in a busy life the moment you pause on an ordinary day to whisper, "I am grateful that today I am still alive, that I can see the sunlight, hear the voices of loved ones, and have a place to return to." Gratitude to the ancestors means knowing we did not come from nothing. The blood flowing in our hearts once flowed through the hearts of those who came before. Even if our forebears made mistakes, they remain our source. To be grateful to them is not to endorse what they did, but to honor the life that was handed down through storms and hardship. Gratitude to parents is the first lesson in being human. No one is born into a perfect world. Some parents cherish their children, some abandon them. Some are embraced, some grow up in coldness. But in every case, no one is born without passing through a mother's body and a father's sweat and tears. Gratitude does not require agreement or forgiveness if one is not ready. It only requires the understanding that we live today because someone did not give up on us. Gratitude for circumstances means accepting what comes as part of the unfolding of karma. When we can be grateful even for difficulties, we are maturing. We no longer resent or lament our fate. We learn to see life as a lesson. Every person we meet and every event that occurs has reasons deeper than what the eye can see. There was an orphan boy living in a shelter. He was often teased for having no parents, but instead of resentment, he thanked life for giving him the strength to endure. He did not hate anyone. He studied and worked hard, and one day became a helper to hundreds of other orphans. When people asked why he did not hate the world, he simply said, "If I am not grateful for what I have, I will not see that I have anything to give." A grateful heart is the fertile soil where all wholesome seeds can sprout. One who lives with gratitude does not envy, does not covet, does not complain. Such a person lives in quiet joy and happiness without needing to raise their voice. Wherever they go, blessings follow, not because they beg for them, but because they are worthy. A family with someone who keeps a grateful heart will raise children who become decent human beings. There is no need to preach, only to live that way. A child will see the mother bow her head in thanks for a meal, even if it is only a bowl of plain porridge. They will see the father never complain, even after hard work. They will see the grandparents quietly lighting incense and joining their palms toward the ancestors. Gratitude is thus passed on like a flame, without any teacher or blackboard and chalk. Gratitude is where blessings return. Those who live with gratitude always have more joy, more loved ones, more good fortune. Heaven and earth favor the humble, and the Dharma draws close to the reverent. Vow to benefit the world, to become a lamp in the night for the whole family line. A small lamp lit in the dark may not illuminate the entire sky, yet it can still ease the fear of those who have lost their way. If in a lineage there is someone who vows to live not only for themselves but for the suffering of many, that person becomes a guiding light for the whole family. Through years of fog and confusion, there was a woman in a family that for 3 generations had never known the Buddha's teaching. Her household lived in a constant whirlpool of disputes, sorrow, and suffering. Her husband was hot-tempered, her children unfilial. Her mother-in-law scolded her all day long. Everyone lived for their own ego, and everyone saw themselves as a victim. More than once, she thought of ending her life because it felt meaningless. Then one day, in the midst of despair, a friend gave her a mala and said, "Each night just sit quietly and recite the name of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. You do not need to understand much, only be sincere." She did not believe it, but because she was at the end of her rope, she tried. For the first time in years, she cried not from pain, but because she felt something dissolving in her heart, like long-settled dust being washed away by a gentle stream. From then on, she recited the Buddha's name every night. She made this vow: "If I am to live, I will live to lighten the suffering of others. I will not resent anymore, will not complain anymore, will not demand that my family change anymore. I will only change myself, and vow to live in a way worthy of being a small lamp in this dark house. 3 months later, without anyone telling anyone else, her husband began to temper his anger, and her children began talking with their mother again. Her mother-in-law, the most difficult of all, started asking her about the Buddha and about the sutras she often chanted. None of this came from sermons, but from one person who silently vowed to live, because she lived quietly, yet brimmed with the strength of compassion. To vow to benefit the world does not mean going up a mountain to practice, nor does it mean doing grand things. To benefit the world is to pause amid a busy life and ask, today have I helped anyone suffer less? Am I becoming a reason for others to feel weary? Am I living in a way that makes the ancestors smile and gives my descendants a place to lean? One who vows to benefit the world does not live for a single lifetime. They carry within them a promise to the ancestors. From me onward, this lineage will change. They carry within them a pledge to their children and grandchildren. From your mother, from your father, you will walk an easier road. They are the invisible pillar of the family, the deep roots of the tree of life, the sky no one sees, but under which everyone lives. Some say one swallow does not make a spring, but in the Buddha's teaching, a single awakened person is enough to start the whole family's journey home. A single awakening of compassion is enough to stir a karmic layer thick as a mountain. To vow to live for the liberation of beings is to invite the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to bestow their protection, to link the family's spiritual stream with the great compassion of the Dharma realm in the 10 directions. When a person gives rise to the vow to benefit the world, heaven and earth take note, spirits show respect, the departed rejoice, and the devas join their palms. For that person no longer lives as a mere recipient, but as a teacher, a messenger, carrying out the mission of reviving a lineage that once forgot the light. When one person changes, the whole lineage is lifted. Have you ever wondered why in a family of dozens the atmosphere can change when just one person changes? Why, when only one person practices, the children seem more obedient, the parents happier, the couple more harmonious? Even the departed come in dreams with gentle smiles. It is because, in the invisible workings of cause and effect, no one lives solely for themselves. We are links in a long chain of conditions stretched across many lives. When one link awakens and refuses to continue the old karma, but instead raises something wholesome, the whole karmic chain begins to vibrate. A new frequency is established, a new wave is born, quiet yet spreading with power. There was a son who had lived recklessly addicted to alcohol, beating his wife, smashing things. One night drunk, he nearly struck his child, then suddenly met the child's eyes, trembling and pressed into a corner. The moment was like an electric shock through his heart. He saw the same eyes from a childhood dream when he himself had hidden in a corner in fear of his father. He burst into tears. For the first time in his life, he realized he was becoming the very person he had most feared, and he vowed to change. From that day, he quit drinking, went to the temple, ate vegetarian meals on the 1st and 15th days of the lunar month. Each morning he rose early to chant sutras. Each evening he sat before the ancestral altar, recited the Buddha's name, and bowed in repentance for himself and for his lineage. No one believed he had truly changed, but time does not lie. A year later, his family was different. The child who had been depressed returned to study. His wife no longer cried in secret each night. The elderly mother, once cold, now brought tea to her son's room each morning, silent, but no longer afraid in her eyes. One person's change draws forth countless transformations. No need to proclaim, no need to persuade, no need to force anyone to practice. If one person lives with mindfulness, virtue, and compassion, the light from that person naturally kindles in others' hearts. Gradually, the dark clouds in the family atmosphere thin as the morning sun dissolves the mist. Many think themselves too small to do anything great. In truth, it is precisely a small person who can turn a karmic tide, for the miracle does not come from outer strength but from inner resolve. When one person is willing to stand up, to endure, to practice, to cultivate, they become like an anchor, holding fast the drifting boat of the entire family. A child who bows in repentance on behalf of their parents can help resolve the karmic debts of the lineage. A grandchild who chants sutras and dedicates merit to the ancestors can help wandering spirits find release. A wife who quietly recites the Great Compassion Mantra and the Buddha's name for her husband can dissolve the karma of separation. A husband who keeps the precepts and loves with care can become a pillar so that descendants do not lose their way. When one person changes, they change not only the present but also the future. Not only the family now living, but also the ancestors and those yet to be born. That person no longer lives as a solitary individual, but as a new root sunk deep into the soil of cause and effect, reviving a tree of life that had seemed withered. Believe that you can be that person, the first in your family, to awaken, the first to stop and turn back, the first to work hard at practice, to endure, to love, to weep in quiet solitude, and transform darkness with inner light. Because you change, your lineage can change. Sometimes a single lamp is enough to light an entire road long lost in shadow. Sowing wholesome causes is action, standing up to live differently, not just praying. People often come before the altar, with hands joined, eyes closed, lips murmuring prayers. Some ask for peace, some for wealth, some for their children's success, some beg for the family's karma to be cleared. The incense smoke rises and the prayers drift with it. Yet few ask themselves, after I finish praying, how will I live differently? Planting wholesome causes does not lie in prayer, it lies in action. If each day we live as before, still throwing harsh words, still surrendering to our anger, still haggling over every little thing, then even if we light 100 sticks of incense and offer 1,000 cups of tea, our karma will not change. Karma does not listen to prayers, it listens only to deeds. A mother may pray for her child to be good, but if she curses, resents and rages before the child every day, that prayer is only an empty echo. A father may pray for the family's peace, but if he still gambles and speaks harshly to his wife and children, that prayer is only a lifeless shadow. Praying without acting is like standing before a parched field, dreaming of a harvest but refusing to sow seed water or till the soil. A young woman once came to the temple to pray that her family's suffering would lessen. The teacher asked, "What have you done to change that suffering?" She lowered her head. "I have done nothing. I only prayed." The teacher said, "Go home, and each day cook a meal for your parents. Speak gently each day. Pick up one thing from the road each day. Recite one mantra each day. Then come back here and pray." She followed his advice. A year later she returned, but she did not pray. She came only to bow, because peace had already arisen in her heart, and her family had changed. The most beautiful prayer is inner transformation. The noblest vow is a single step truly taken toward the good. Sowing wholesome causes is not sitting and waiting for blessings to arrive. Sowing wholesome causes is doing what is right each day, even when no one sees, correcting yourself each day, even when it is hard, choosing the good each day, even when something harmful is enticing you. You do not need to do anything grand. It is enough that each morning you ask, "Can I live more gently today? Can I forgive sooner? Can I smile at the one who once hurt me?" Each act is a wholesome seed, and the field of karma refuses no seed. Plant it with sincerity. A person who lights a stick of incense with a pure mind and a grateful heart, then steps back into life and lives differently, has already sown a wholesome cause. A person who chants a sutra and then returns to treat their family with kindness has already changed karma. A person who eats a vegetarian meal and vows not to harm, not to add more suffering to living beings, is opening the door of blessings for generations to come. There is no practice more wondrous than living decently. There is no mantra more sacred than mindfulness in each deed. And there is no prayer that carries farther than a wholesome action, no matter how small. We sow wholesome causes not to trade for anything, but to lighten our own hearts, to deepen our lives, to warm our families, to give our lineage a different direction. It is a direction no longer dependent on the past, no longer bound by old karma, but the way of freedom, of love, of wisdom. When our actions have changed, there is no need to pray, for blessings have already begun to blossom from each step we take in this life. Every lineage, whether glorious or fallen, has a history that was never written. It is the history of thoughts, deeds, words, and small decisions that were enough to set the course for a whole generation. There are lineages that were once illustrious but collapsed through the karma of arrogance, through ambition, through contention. There are families sunk in the shadow of poverty, illness, and relentless grievances, as if fate were engraved in their blood. Yet no one forces us to go on living under that fate. In the very moment, a person sits down to reflect, to repent, and to vow to live differently. At that moment, the wheel of karma begins to turn in a new direction. When someone keeps a filial heart, holds the precepts, eats vegetarian meals, recites the Buddha's name, lives kindly, avoids harmful speech, cultivates gratitude and vows to benefit the world, that person is not only saving themselves, they are opening a path of revival for the entire lineage. That path is not strewn with roses. It is full of trials, full of loneliness, full of collapses and silent risings. Yet it is also the only path by which light can break through the dark, by which love can be reborn from ruin, by which tender shoots of hope can sprout from what seemed beyond remedy. Perhaps you will be the first in your lineage to kneel before the ancestral altar and say, "Let me shoulder a share of our forebears' karma. Let me live a virtuous life and dedicate it to this family line." Perhaps you will be the first in your family to choose serious vegetarian practice, to chant a sutra not out of petition, but out of gratitude. Perhaps you will be the first in your bloodline who knows how to bow to weep for old mistakes, to open your heart and forgive even what cannot be explained. And perhaps you, though you have never thought yourself special, are the very key that will unlock a new door for both ancestors and descendants. A lineage that has suffered does not have to go on suffering like a festering wound. If someone is willing to cleanse it with the tears of wakefulness, with the light of practice, with boundless compassion, that wound will become the birthplace of new life. We cannot choose where we are born, but we can choose how we live, and thus choose a new direction for our bloodline. We do not need to be saints, do not need to be honored. We need only live so that from today onward, our children will not have to bend under the mistakes of their forefathers. That is revival. Not noisy, not miraculous, but a quiet current flowing from heart to heart, from breath to breath, from one wholesome act to a new way of life. In this way, blessings are no longer something distant. They become a true gift, wrapped in love, delivered by mindfulness, opened in the peaceful days of our descendants. It is a gift no one sees, yet everyone receives. Friend, if you have read this far, perhaps you are the one holding the seed of transformation in your hand. Do not let it slip away amid the world's cacophony. Sow it quietly and trust that spring will come. And a lineage once mired in suffering will one day be reborn through the mindful steps of a person like you.